أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد اللهم صل وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Before the break we had recited this khutbah number 2 up till this point, and inshallah we'll start from here. Amir al-Mu'mineen, as you remember this khutbah, the discussion was after he had left Siffin and he delivered it upon returning from it, and some of the words that you will hear towards the end give us that meaning where Imam ﷺ is referencing some of the things that are pertaining to Siffin. We did talk a little bit about this, so I'll skip past and we'll come to the last two portions of this khutbah so we can move along. In this very same khutbah where he returns from Siffin, Imam ﷺ addresses this concept. He referred to the household of the Prophet, the Ahlul Bayt ﷺ, in the following way. When he speaks about the Ahlul Bayt, Imam says, Hum mawdi'u sirrihi wa laja'u amrihi wa aibatu ilmihi wa mu'ammilu hukmihi wa kuhufun. That these are, and this is the attributes of the Ahlul Bayt in the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that when he talks about them, he says they are the trustees of his secrets, shelter for his affairs, sources of the knowledge about him, center of his wisdom, valleys for his books, and mountains of his religion. These 6, again, as I mentioned, Imam ﷺ, when he's talking about Ahlul Bayt, and he's part of the Ahlul Bayt ﷺ, he uses these short and very meaningful phrases which clarifies the position of Ahlul Bayt for everyone. That if you misunderstood Ahlul Bayt, this is a clear-cut clarification for you. What is their position after Rasulullah? With these 8 consecutive sentences, out of which I recited for you the first 6. In fact, these are similar to what you find in Hadith Thaqalain, inni tarikum fikum Thaqalain, what you find similar to in Ayatul Mubahala, for example, Anfusana wa Anfusakum. This is similar to what you find in Hadith of Safinatu Nuh, for example, Mathalu Ahl Bayti ka Mathali Safinat Nuhin man rakibaha naja wahtada, and similar to a hadith of, for example, Nujum. With that said, in these first 6, when Imam says they are the trustees of his secret, shelter of all his affairs, source of knowledge about him, center of his wisdom, valleys for his books, and mountains of his religion, with them Allah straightened the bend of religion's back and removed the trembling of its limbs. These are some of the terminologies that Imam is using. Of course, this is not literal, rather it is metaphorical use of these words. Although some scholars have considered some of these sentences to be synonymous, meaning they're repetitive. If you look at the meaning, it's very close. Mawdi'u sirri, malja'u amri, aibatu ilmi, mu'ammilu hukmi, kuhu. These are synonymous to each other. They're very similar when it comes to the meanings of these words. The truth is that each one of them refers to a specific point. And Shurrah and the commentators have gone in depth talking about each and every single one of these words, that they are repeated, but that does not mean that they're same. There might be close in the meaning, but each and every single one of them is unique in its own way because it's the word of Amirul Mu'mineen. You know, just like that story of a person who comes and asks Imam about the difference between knowledge and wealth. Each time Imam gave a different reply. It may be the same, but each time it was a unique reply. At one point, a person asked, Imam said, knowledge, it spreads when you spend it. Wealth decreases when you spend it. Second person came and asked, what is the difference between ilm and mal? Imam said, ilm protects you while you protect mal. And then third person came, asked the difference. So Imam every time would give a unique reply. It will not be the same as the one previous, but very synonymous, very close to one another. So that's why when many of the shura, they all refer to specific meanings. This is not a repetition by Amir al-Mu'mineen. After these these six meaningful descriptions, he adds two more sentences. He says, Bihim aqama inha al-zahrihi wa adhaba irti'ada fara'idhihi, right? Wa adhaba irti'ada fara'isihi. That through them, the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, Allah straightened the religion and removed its trembling and wavering and terror. That how it was trembling, the limbs were, were shaking. It happens to us all the time. That when there's this internal fear, you could see that insan is shaking. When you're facing natural calamity. One time that I really saw within me and others with me, this trembling and this fear was when we were making our way to Jamarat. And there was a crowd coming from the opposite direction, and there was a stampede of sword happening. We were caught in the middle of it. And I could see on the face of the shurta who was standing on top, who was able to see what was happening, and he was seeing the, how people were colliding. That year also there was some, stampede that happened in the way to Mina. And he was literally shaking. And we were shaken up too, because we didn't know what's going to happen. And eventually, alhamdulillah, we were able to find our way out of it. Similarly, you look at the lives, and you and I, of course, we don't do this enough. Meaning this shaking and the trembling of our limbs doesn't happen enough, even though it should happen every time we stand up in prayer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? We don't realize that who are we standing in front of? It's like I'm standing in front of another human being. So out of fear, you stand in front of Allah, your limbs should be trembling. And that's what Imam Hassan was. That every time he would stand up for wudu, people would see that his mafasil, his body parts and organs would be shaking. It's like, Imam, why do I see this halat upon you? He said, it is incumbent when you stand in front of Baina Yaday al-Jabbar that you should, feel this way. His face complexion would change. He'll become pale as he's moving toward salah. We just go do wudu, come and pray, and then as if nothing happened. That's the extent of our understanding. And so Imam said, in hina al-zahrihi, right? In hina al-zahrihi, the bending of the back. The bending of the back is metaphorically used for problems that are imposed on religion by wise enemies and ignorant friends. Keep in mind. There are some wise enemies, and then there are some ignorant friends. Because of them, masail and the masaib and the problems and the turmoil and calamities fall upon us. But by these noble Ahlul Bayt, what is happening? In hina al-zahrihi, the back is then straightened. These wise friends and ignorant enemies, they bend the back of religion, but Ahlul Bayt come and they straighten the back of religion once again. That's what Imam ﷺ is mentioning over here. That these pressures are neutralized and the stature of religion is straightened back up. That's why all the time you should refer to Ahlul Bayt. That's what Allah said. Or Prophet said, Rasulullah said, Tarikum fikum al-thaqalain, kitab and Ahlul Bayt. So you refer to Quran to straighten your understanding of religion. If you can't understand through Quran, you refer to Ahlul Bayt, who will be explaining the Quran, which you're unable to understand as well. وَإِرْتِعَادَ فَرَائِسِهِ, the trembling of that part of the body that covers the heart, is another gentle metaphor to the anxiety and the terror, right? When you're trembling, it's not that physically the body parts are shaking, it's from within that shaking comes. Your heart is shaking. And because of that, everything else is showing its reaction. So that anxiety and that terror comes to the believers from those who don't believe in the religion. Those who go towards the religious deviations, which is again neutralized by the imams and regains its peace. All right. Coming towards the end of it, considering that this sermon was given after the Battle of Siffin, it seems that the pronouns in this portion, the first three segments that Imam talks about, the pronouns in the first three sentences in the beginning of this section refer to the companions of Amir Sham, the Khawarij, and is even possible that refer to the hypocrites who fought against Amirul Mu'mineen. So when you read it, it says, منها يعني بها قوما آخرين زرعوا الفجور وسقوه الغرور وحسدوا الثبور. That these are the people. Zara'a comes from zira'at, from, when you plant something. Saqaw comes from watering, right? Hasadu comes from, harvesting, when you take it out. तो पहले फुर्सत में आप बोते हैं, फिर उस पर पानी डालते हैं, फिर आप उसको काश्त कर लेते हैं, right? These are 3 steps of a farmer. Imam uses these 3 steps. Look at the analogy. He says, in an accurate and eloquent analogy, they sowed the seed of debauchery in the land of their hearts, in the fabric of the Islamic community. That's what these people did. Zara'u al-fujur. And watered it with the water of pride and deceit. And number 3, finally, they reaped the misery and what's going to come out of this? If you're, sowing evil and you're watering with arrogance, what's going to come out of it? Anything good happening here? No. Only bad stuff will come out of it. And they reaped the misery and the destruction that was the product of this ominous seed. This ominous seed is only going to produce nothing but destruction and misery. This is exactly the 3 stages, as I mentioned, that are said about a farmer today in agriculture. That they sow, they cultivate, and then they harvest. These are the 3 steps. Then Imam returns once again, describing the attributes of Ahlul Bayt. When we say, don't compare Ahlul Bayt to anyone, we're not saying it from ourselves. This is the word of Amirul Mu'mineen. لا يقاس بآل محمد من هذه الأمة أحد. Doesn't get any more clearer than that. That no one can be compared to Ahlul Bayt in this ummah. You name all your elders, no one can be compared to Ahlul Bayt. That's their maqam. And of course the reason is obvious, as we mentioned, Hadith al-Thaqalain, where Prophet compares Ahlul Bayt to Quran. And Quran has no thani. Quran has no one can be matched with. Only match of Quran is Ahlul Bayt. Then how do you go ahead and compare Ahlul Bayt with anyone else? Their maqam is buland and their maqam is separate. Moreover, you find in Quran how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Ahlul Bayt. These features that are mentioned in Quran about Ahlul Bayt, Imam is saying, La yuqasu bi ali Muhammadin ahadun. We're not saying this just because I'm part of Ahlul Bayt and my family and my children will be Imams. Imam Ali is saying, right? No, not because of this nasab, this relationship. Although relationship also has a big deal, big play over here. But it's due to the fact that Quran is praising. You look at the ayat Tathir, innama yuridullah. You look at the ayat of Mubahala, ta'alu abna'ana wa abna'akum, nisa'ana wa nisa'akum, wa anfusana wa anfusakum. You look at ayat ita'at, atiyullah wa atiyur rasul wa ulil amri minkum. You look at ayat wilayat, innama waliyukumullah wa rasul wa allazina amanu wa allazina yuqimuna salat wa yutuna zakat wa hum raki'un. You look at all of these different ayat that are there in Quran, to which Allah said, Rasulullah said, Tarikum fikum al-thaqalain. You find how Ahlul Bayt are mentioned, then how can you go ahead and compare Ahlul Bayt with anyone else? In addition, the sentences and knowledge, the sciences and knowledge that have been transmitted from Imams cannot be compared with the sciences and knowledge given by anyone else, especially 14 centuries ago. Now, of course, the wujud of Imam today would be far superior to the technological advances that we have. But Imams who were present 14 centuries ago, lived amongst the people, they could have presented the similar advancement of science that we have today. But people would not have understood it. They didn't have the tools to manage it, for example. But they knew the reality of the heart, they knew the reality of the lungs, they knew the reality of the body, they knew the reality of the celestial bodies that exist in our surroundings. But of course, no one would be able to comprehend. For Ali to say something like this, that I am more knowledgeable about the paths of the heavens than I am of the paths of this earth, is not an understatement. He's not exaggerating कि अली को वहाँ के रास्तों का ज़्यादा इल्म है यहाँ के रास्तों के बजाय. Why is he said, well, who's going to ask me about it, right? Let me just go ahead and say it. Who's going to ask me? No, he's not using this metaphorically. He's saying it literally. I am more aware of the paths of the heavens than I am aware of the paths of the earth. How so? We've said it before. You live in New Jersey, you know the roads in New Jersey. Well, at least some of us know the roads of New Jersey. We still rely on GPS. But, if you go to a new place, you go to California, you go to Houston, you go to Chicago, you'll be relying on, but I don't know the paths over here. You know better because you live here. So Imam saying that I know the paths of heavens, meaning what? He must have had some interaction over there. He must have spent some time over there. I don't know how Rasulullah gave him that knowledge. Maybe that is the reason. Because Rasulullah has already gone for Mi'raj and has come back from Mi'raj. So Rasulullah gave that knowledge to Ali, so he has that all-encompassing knowledge. Therefore, these sciences that Ahlul Bayt brought cannot be compared with anyone else. So therefore, how can you compare their personalities? And then you look at the examples like this Nahj al-Balaghah that we're reading, Saif al-Sajjadiyah from 4th Imam, and the other ahadith, the multitude of ahadith that you have from our 5th and 6th Imams regarding various sciences that exist, that came into existence because of their ilm, then can you compare them with anyone else? In the next sentences, he says something that is actually the reason for the previous sentences. وَلَا يُسَوِّي بِهِمْ مَنْ جَرَتْ نِعْمَتُهُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَبَدًا. Those who benefited from the blessings of Prophet will never be equal to them. These famous words of Prophet are enough of a proof of showing superiority. Now this is where you can say Imam needs to say these things. Why? He's returning back from Siffin. He, after 25 years of silence, now has what? Hukumat in his hands. So Imam has the right to utter these words to these people who came barging at his door, demanding what? That he be the Khalifa. Now Imam is going to go ahead and let them hear this as well. That this is what Prophet has said about me. La yusawwi bihim man jarat ni'matuhum alayhi abada. No one, those who benefit from the blessings, will never be equal to them. These famous words, ضربة علي يوم الخندق أفضل من إبادة الثقلين. The one strike of Ali You just now selected me as your Khalifa. But Rasulullah had said this before, 30 years ago, that one strike of Ali on the day of Khandaq is superior to the ibadat of jinn and ins combined, thaqalain. Or when Rasulullah said, "Mubarizatu aliyin li Amr ibn Abdawud, afdalu amali ummati ila yawm al-qiyamah." That combat that Ali had with Amr ibn Abdawud is the best of the amal of my entire ummah. Nothing can be compared to what Ali did, to what ummah can do until the day. In the following sentences, and I'll go through it quickly. Hum asasuddin, imadul yaqeen, ilayhim yafi'ul ghali, walahum ilayhim yafi'ul ghali, and there should be a sentence after that as well. Wabihim yalhaqut tali, this missing there. Ilayhim yafi'ul ghali wa bihim yalhaqul tali. That these two words, these two sentences are used to protect the Nusayri today. We have the musibat of Nusairiyat, right? Nusayri and Muqassir. You hear these two words a lot. It's thrown so loosely. Wo Nusayri hain, wo Muqassir hain, wo Nusayri hain, wo Muqassir hain, so loosely. If we have seen Nusayri anywhere, it's in the Shia poetry. And if there's wujud of Nusairiyat, now it's increasing within our Shia circles. Unfortunately, you find Nusayri. जो अहले बैत के मकाम को रसूलुल्लाह से बढ़ाते हैं और अल्लाह तक पहुंचा देते हैं. They're Nusayri, right? Now, some scholars, or Zakirin, I guess I would say, use this sentence right here of Imam Ali to do what? To protect the Nusayri and to protect the Muqassir as well. What do they say? What's that? Imam said this, Ilayhim yafi'ul ghali, the forward runner has to come back to them, وَبِهِمْ يَلْحَقُ التَّالِي, and the follower has to overtake them. Translation may not be the best, but I'll explain. إِلَيْهِمْ يَفِيُّ الْغَالِي. Ghali, we all know what ghali is. Ghali jo ghulu karta hai. And that's where the word Nusayri comes from as well. Nusayri, the one who does ghulu in the maqam of Ahlul Bayt. إِلَيْهِمْ يَفِيُّ الْغَالِي, meaning what? Today they'll use this term to say, look, Imam said, Ghali will also be protected by Imam. And Muqassir will also be protected by Imam. Why? Ghali has to come to and reach the Imamat, and those who have gone ahead of Imam, that is Ghali, has to be brought back. You can't just let them be. And those who have stayed behind, meaning those who are doing taqsir in the maqam of Ahlul Bayt, they got to be brought up to par. Kind of like when they're standing in Ghadir, there were people who went ahead. There were people who were still coming. So Rasulullah stood in the plains of Ghadir, said, those who have gone ahead, bring them back. Those who are still coming, let's wait for them. And then we'll gather here and then announce the Wilayat of Ali. They use this sentence to go ahead and protect those who are doing ghulu. And they protect those who are doing taqsir in the maqam of Ahlul Bayt. Neither one needs to be protected. In fact, this is not a good way of using these words of Imam. How can it be like this while they believe in the straight path and our ummah and the ummah wasata, as mentioned here, that how can they believe in that? Who explain, while they have Ahlul Bayt with them, who explain the teachings and the beliefs and the ahkam of Islam without exaggeration. Ahlul Bayt have not done any exaggeration in explaining any of these things. In explaining the maqam of themselves, they didn't exaggerate. Imam Ali here talked about Ahlul Bayt. He said they cannot be compared with anyone. Anyone from yourselves. He didn't say raise us above Rasul and Allah. He said can't be compared with people like you and I, but of course cannot be taken above Allah and Ahlul Bayt, Allah and Rasulullah. So they explain the ahkam, they explain the teachings, they explain the beliefs without exaggeration. जब उन्होंने exaggeration नहीं किया, then why are you exaggerating regarding them? He warned the Muslims against those dangerous and blasphemous excesses. जो बढ़ जाते हैं, जो आगे निकल जाते हैं, Imam is warning them. And this is where the truth of Imam's words becomes clear, that the disobedient should return to them and hurry back to the remaining ones and reach them. Again, this is a nice metaphor, simile that Imam is using, that imagines a caravan that has an alert and a knowledgeable guide with them, who's able to guide, don't step here, don't step here, don't go here, don't go here, just follow me in the straight line. I remember when first the ziyarat of Iraq was opened after the demise of Saddam and downfall of Saddam, Mal'oon, that the borders of Iran were open to Iraq. The borders were closed. 2003, after he was captured and killed, the borders were open. Hundreds and thousands of people from Iran were just going because there was no visa required. They just passed through the border and they'll just go. They were deprived of the ziyarat of Sayyid al-Shuhada. I remember many of our classmates in Qom, they also went. Visa or no visa, passport or no passport, you can just go to Iraq for the ziyarat. People went. And then some of them told us that, when we entered by road, we were given a guide. He said, just follow me, go behind me, don't make a left or a right, because there are landmines that are left behind over here. And you don't want to be stepping on them. So you need an alert and a knowledgeable guide. Look at how people want to do shock of ziyarat, that they're risking their lives just to go for the ziyarat of Sayyid al-Shuhada. They walked in the straight line. So you need that alert and knowledgeable guide. But a reckless group goes ahead, gets lost in the desert, and a weak group stays behind and falls victim to the wild beasts in the desert. That's what Imam Islam is mentioning when he says, Ilayhim Jafiul Ghali, and the other one. And the last and the final conclusion, he says the characteristic of the wilayat and the government are from Ahlul Bayt. وَلَهُمْ خَصَائِصُ حَقِّ الْوِلَايَةِ وَفِيهِمِ الْوَصِيَّةُ وَالْوَارِثَةُ. That by mentioning the word lahum khasa'is, Imam ﷺ is restricting the right only belongs to Imam of Ahlul Bayt. This wilayat, Imam did not say al-wilayatu lahum. He said no, lahum khasa'isul wilayah. Lahum, by bringing the word lahum before, zarf of jar majroor, the Arabic aspect of it, Imam is restricting. Jaisa aap padhte hain, innama yuridullah, right? Innama does what? Hisar. No one outside of this. By using lahum khasais, Imam is restricting it. That this right only belongs to Ahlul Bayt. The will of the Prophet and the inheritance of the Caliphate and the Khilafat are in them, that is the Ahlul Bayt. It is obvious that the meaning of will and the inheritance here is the position of the Khilafat and the continuation of the prophethood, and even those who have taken the inheritance. Because there are many commentators of Nahj al-Balaghah, Sunni and Shia, because their Aqidah comes in between over here. Because they believe in Khilafat al-Rashida, the first, the second, and the third, and the fourth. So they will never be able to translate this the way we are translating it. Imam has said it very clearly. But how do they translate? Well, the word inheritance over here and the knowledge of the Prophet, is not in the sense that they are the successor. Rather, it is in the sense that they were closest to them, so therefore they were able to be the inheritors of this knowledge. Where, of course, the inheritance of the knowledge of the Prophet, the result is that they are qualified to attain this position, because the leader of the people must inherit from the knowledge of the Prophet, cannot be jahil of the ilm that Rasulullah had left behind, should not be showing ignorance towards the ayat of Quran, basic ayat of Quran, and his successor is his executor of his will, because we know that the inheritance of property is not an honor. If Rasul is leaving behind a property to his son, to his daughter, that itself is not a big honor. That vilayat which Rasulullah is leaving behind, that is the true honor that is being mentioned. And the will is not considered important in the personal and ordinary matters. And those who have tried to interpret the will and the inheritance in such meaning are basically trapped in their prejudice and in their ta'assub. Finally, the last sentence, then we'll conclude. He addresses the appreciative people of his time, those who were true to him, not those who just ran because there was no other option. Those who were true to him, and there were many who were true to Amirul Mu'mineen, who stuck by him even in the most difficult of the times. The people like Salman and Abu Zar and Miqdad and so on and so forth. He said, Alan idh raja al-haq ila ahlihi. Even now that the right has returned to its people, meaning the Ahlul Bayt, it was not with them. Look at these subtle words of Imam are basically fixing the aqaid. These are making our aqidah. These are establishing the aqaid. This word itself is saying now the right has returned to its people. Meaning what? For the first 25 years it was not in the right hands. These are the words of Imam. We're not saying it. Imam is saying it himself. That now the right has come to the right people, those who were given and this position was given to them. From what was said above about will and inheritance, it is clear that the meaning of right here is the right of imamat, the right of governorship, not the physical properties which the Ahl Bayt were the most worthy of, and in fact it was a right that only suited them and no one else. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.